Okay, and as people come in, they'll be reminded that, and if anybody has a problem or doesn't want their video on while we're recording, that's a choice you can make as well.
Good morning, everyone.
Hi, Linda.
Hey, Linda.
Like your haircut.
Thank you.
Hi, Sarah. Hi, Andrea. Andrea, I haven't seen you in forever. It's good to see you. Well, kind of see you. I see an image of you. It's just 9 o'clock now. I think we'll just give everybody a minute or two more to come on board, and then we'll go ahead and get started. I've got my tea, but I'm almost out. So, it's everybody. What's the favorite tree in the garden, or favorite flower that you've seen recently? Anybody want to contribute?
I have a magnolia salata right outside my window here, and it's wonderful. Little hankies.
We're enjoying the forsythia, a yellow forsythia, the most. It's been blooming so long now. I'm not sure. Seems to me it's approaching 2 weeks.
I have a field of grape hyacinth.
We have a whole, like a rosemary hedge in the front that I trimmed up, and it's come back very strong this spring, which is lovely because it has just started blooming. It's been blooming for a while, but it attracts hummingbirds during the winter, so it's nice to see them. So the rosemary is just bright blue, lovely.
Judy, I see your mouth moving, but I don't hear you.
I saw some look like mason bees on a neighbor's rosemary blooms. It's pretty fragrant.
I'm really enjoying my red bud. It's just starting to have tiny little blossoms. You know how it blooms all along the whole stem of the branch. It's really going to be gorgeous soon.
Anybody else with the flower report? Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. Really glad to see you all here. This is our fourth Sunday where we have more just kind of interest programming or spiritual deepening, and really glad to have Ada with us. I'll give a little introduction in a minute, but to get started, Bill, if you would like to do an opening reading for us, please.
Okay. For our opening, I have a comment about, I want to read a comment about current youth experience from a climate article that was published last week. They've grown up in a pandemic. They've come of age in an era of strong men leaders. The climate crisis looms over their very lives. Generation Z, the cohort born after 1996, has inherited a set of compounding uncertainties. Thank you.
Well, that gives us a little backdrop, doesn't it? Reminds us of that context. Thank you, Bill. And Ada, just so you know, as Unitarians, we start our meetings with usually a candle lighting. I don't have a candle, but at least we will say together, we are Unitarian Universalists. We light this candle in faith, hope,
and in love.
Welcome, everybody. Glad you're here. I am so pleased to welcome Ada Crandall to our Community for Earth meeting today. We've invited Ada, as a youth climate leader because she has a ton of insight into what's really going on for her and for folks like her in Portland specifically, and in Oregon and in this country. We were discussing what kind of speakers we'd like to have a month or two ago, and I heard from several of you that you really wanted to hear from youth leaders. What's going on with what's the perspectives are for the youth in our community. And of course, Ada came right to mind because she is one of those youth leaders, and we're lucky to have her here today. I do want to say that we are not a group that sits on our hands and looks to youth to solve the climate crisis. I think I hear that from a lot of folks that I interact with on a day-to-day basis, like, oh, thank goodness, we've got our youth and they're going to take care of the problem. And I really am offended by that, because we contributed to the problem, so we have the obligation to help solve it. And we need to hear from the youth who are going to be the most impacted and to ally with them. But this group right here is not those folks. And I want Ada to know that, and I want to remind us all that we are not going to sit here and just leave it to them to clean up our mess. So we're here to understand how to be better allies and to understand perspectives that we may not hear frequently. So I hope you'll join us in listening to this organizing work that Ada's going to talk about, how she's doing it, why she's doing it, what brought her to it, and then formulate our own questions about that work. So that's what I'm going to encourage you all. Jot down your questions if you want to put them in the chat, or write them down on a piece of paper as she's talking, because we're going to leave a lot of time at the end for Q&A to understand more about what Ada's doing, but also ask how we can become better allies to our youth leaders. So with that introduction, I think Ada will tell us a little bit about her background and why she came to this. So I won't repeat that, and I'll just turn it over to her. And if everybody could be on mute except for Ada until we get to the Q&A, and then we'll open up open it up. Okay, thanks, Ada.
Awesome, thank you for that. Okay, hold on, I'm gonna share my screen. I have some slides. Okay, can people see the slides? All right. Wait, no. Slideshow. Cool. Yeah, so okay, it's loading. Yeah, my name is Ada. I use she, her pronouns. I am an organizer with Sunrise PDX and also Portland Youth Climate Strike. Today, I am going to talk mostly about a campaign that Sunrise is running called Youth versus ODOT. And then I'm also going to touch on a mobilization that's coming up for May 20th, which is a citywide climate strike. And they're all sort of interconnected. But I think the transportation work definitely gives a good background as to why I started this work. I attended Harriet Tubman Middle School in 7th and 8th grade, which is right next to the I-5 freeway. And my classmates and I, we started learning about the pollution and the way that the freeway was impacting our school. And so that was sort of what motivated me to start taking action. Okay. So this is kind of technical information, so I'll sort of speed through it, but ODOT is essentially proposing many different highway expansions all over the state. The I-5 Rose Quarter one is the one that is in Tubman Middle School's backyard. It would cut into the hillside that the school sits on and make students move to a new building, which is really frustrating and was the first thing that I learned about and is how I got involved in this. But then sort of as I've learned more and as I've continued that advocacy, we've sort of realized that I-5 is bad, but it's not the only one. And there are all of these others being proposed all around the state, some of which are already being constructed. This, I just wanted to include as sort of a visual of the scale of these projects that ODOT is proposing. This is the representation of the Interstate Bridge Replacement Project, which they say they're just replacing the bridge, but really it's a multi-million-dollar expansion of this freeway. And so I think that this visual is just really striking of, they're saying that this project is something that's going to further efforts for climate justice, and it's just not. Yeah, so I think some of these things are sort of the obvious impacts of freeways, but things like more traffic, I think a lot of people don't necessarily think about, because oftentimes the argument for expanding roads is that it will make there be less traffic. But that's actually not how it works. As we add more lanes, there are more vehicles. And when there are more vehicles, there are more emissions and more pollution, which was something that was especially scary to my classmates and I at Tubman, because we were next to that freeway all the time and we were breathing those emissions every day. And we, as middle school students, could understand that freeway expansion wasn't what our community needed. And it felt like the state and local governments were just not paying attention. And that was really disheartening at times. And then sort of going a layer deeper, a lot of the freeways around Portland and around the United States have been constructed through historically Black neighborhoods, which has led to gentrification and displacement. And so part of trying to heal those historic harms is by either tearing out the freeways in the first place or giving reparations to the people who were harmed, things like that, not furthering the freeway expansions and furthering the damage. And then another big part of the advocacy work that Sunrise is doing is calling for the projects that need money to be funded. And we simply, we can't fund transit and bike and pedestrian infrastructure that will help us reduce our emissions if we're pouring billions and billions of dollars into freeway expansion. So that sort of takes us up to the end of sort of the start of COVID, of quarantine. I had learned about all of these things with my middle school group and we had done some advocacy around it, but then I joined Sunrise movement. Sunrise, if people aren't familiar, is a movement of young people fighting to stop climate change and create millions of good jobs in the process. There are Sunrise hubs all over the country. Some of them are working as part of national campaigns. Some of them are working on more local campaigns. But the Portland hub, is focused more around transportation issues. And then we also have a forestry campaign. I'm not the expert on that, but if you're interested in learning more, there's information on our website. But we've sort of taken this Sunrise framework of we're gonna stop climate change and create millions of good jobs and applied that to here in Oregon, where one of our biggest sources of emissions is transportation. And so we've been focusing a lot on what are the steps we can take to decarbonize our transportation system, and stopping freeway expansion is a big part of that. So for the last year now, almost coming up on a year, which is really exciting, we have been holding bi-weekly rallies outside of the Oregon Department of Transportation headquarters, starting there, and then we've been moving to other locations around the city recently. We have a series of demands that I will go into on the next slide, but essentially we are calling on local and state governments to stop widening freeways and instead prioritize alternative transportation systems that will reduce our emissions, which is something that I think that young people especially feel a lot of urgency around, especially having experienced the wildfires and the heat waves of last summer and realizing that, the climate crisis is here right now and our leaders just aren't acting like it. We have week 24 of the rallies this Wednesday. If anyone is interested in attending, I can get the information to you somehow. But it's been really amazing to see these rallies grow as time goes on. The first week there were only a handful of us just standing outside of ODOT. We didn't really think much of it. I could never have seen it going this long. Realizing that it's only almost been a year now is really kind of hard for me to believe, because we really did start as just a group of teenagers who cared about something, and we had megaphones and cardboard signs. But because we have this urgency and we're so driven, we have managed to make a lot of serious change in the way that our leaders talk about these issues. We've had several state representatives attend our rallies. And I think it really does go to show what youth grassroots organizing can do. in a way that is really impressive and that I think is scaring ODOT a little bit, which is good and exciting because they need to be held accountable and they need people to realize that what they're doing isn't okay. Okay. So we have 4 sort of more technical demands for the campaign. There's like an overarching idea of decarbonized transportation, but there are some more like instrumental specific things that we want. The first is an environmental impact statement on the Rose Quarter Freeway expansion, which is right in the backyard of Tubman. An environmental impact statement is basically like the bare minimum that any project of this scale should do. And because ODOT is this really wealthy, powerful agency, they were essentially able to bypass that. And they haven't fully studied the environmental impact of widening a freeway into a middle school in the middle of a climate crisis. And I think that even just that sentence right there, I think really goes to show the level of essentially corruption that ODOT has, in the fact that they're really not acting with our community's best interests in mind. The second demand goes sort of farther than that to say that we want a moratorium on all freeway expansion within Portland's urban growth boundary. So there was that slide a while back that sort of listed out all of the different projects that they're proposing, and this demand is essentially a very ambitious, more symbolic idea to just stop all of those, because the money that's going to those projects could be going to so many things that would help us so much more. The third is for a youth climate advocate to be appointed to the Oregon Transportation Commission. There's currently no one on the OTC who really is going to live to see the lasting impacts of the decisions that they're making about climate. And so it's easy for those people to just vote for another freeway expansion and vote for more emissions and more pollution, because they're not teenagers growing up in this world realizing that that's the future that we're inheriting. And so we have been really pushing to get a young person appointed to the commission, because the other perspective that young people have is that often we can't or don't drive. We're not old enough to. And so this commission for a long time has been very centered around the idea of cars as the only way to get around. And so starting to break down that narrative and really have other perspectives and prioritize bike and pedestrian infrastructure and transit. And I think that getting a youth advocate there is one of the ways to do that. The fourth demand is something that we added recently. The federal government recently passed the Build Back Better infrastructure package. And so we're demanding that all of the money that states will be getting from the infrastructure package be going not to freeway expansions, but instead to transit and rail and biking and walking, because this money is a really important opportunity to change the ways that we're building these systems. And I think that it is something that we should hopefully utilize instead of pouring this money into furthering climate destruction. The fifth demand unfortunately failed last summer. We were calling on Governor Brown to veto House Bill 3055, which would essentially give ODOT more money for freeway expansion. And she did sign it, which is really unfortunate. So I've talked a bit about the rallies that we have been holding, and I think that that direct action has been a really important part of, building a community around this and getting the energy up and getting people excited about it and bringing new people in. But sort of the other side of what we've been doing is a lot of political engagement work. So we frequently give testimony at a lot of obscure various government committees that I honestly had no idea that existed until getting involved in this work. It's interesting to see how adults react to young people testifying, because I think it can be very startling, and oftentimes they don't expect teenagers to show up in those spaces. But I think that that's really powerful, but it's also difficult to feel like we're being heard, especially in the online public meeting format, where it's sort of like you have your 2 minutes to talk and then it's all done. And so I guess I've been a little bit disillusioned by those processes, and it's gotten to a point where it doesn't really feel like we're being heard, but we are very persistent and we will keep showing up. We've also had several meetings with elected officials to talk about our demands. We met with Governor Brown this fall, which was kind of mind-blowing because it's like, oh, we were just teenagers who wanted to protest freeway expansions, and we've been doing it every other week, and now the governor wants a meeting with us. And so I felt like that sort of felt like, in a way, a victory of just like people are noticing what we're doing, even though the meeting didn't really go how we wanted it to. It was sort of disappointing, but I think we had somewhat low expectations. It did feel significant that someone with that amount of power would want a meeting with us, though. We've also, with the election coming up, we have been sending out a questionnaire to all of the candidates that Sunrise PDX would potentially endorse, asking them about their views on transportation issues, among other things, to ensure that the people that we're endorsing are people who are supportive of this youth movement and supportive of our demands. Some of the on Youth v. ODOT serve on various advisory boards and commissions for their like county governments, which is a cool way to sort of be more involved on the inside of how these decisions are being made. And then also one person from our campaign, Cassie, is thinking about potentially running for office in the future, which is really exciting. Also disappointing that she feels like she has to do that, but is great to have people who really are passionate about these issues and care about making a difference, are able to step up and really be in positions of power, even if we should be able to trust that the leaders we have in office will do those things. Okay. Yeah, so moving forward, we are going to continue striking every other week. We're coming up on the 1-year birthday of Youth versus ODOT, which is really exciting and feels like it went by really fast. The Oregon Transportation Commission is also voting, I think this Wednesday, so like the same day as the strike, about how the federal infrastructure money will be spent, which at this point we're sort of like, they've heard from us a lot and we're sort of just waiting to see what they'll do. And then I am also going to talk a little bit about the May 20th climate strike and festival. Okay, wait, I have one more slide about Youth versus ODOT first. Yeah, so I know that you all talked about being interested in like finding ways to be allies to youth movements. And so these are a couple of different ways to get involved. We would love to have folks show up to Youth versus ODOT rallies. It's called Youth versus ODOT, but we want anyone of all ages to be there and show support and really build this like multi-generational movement. Yeah, showing up is a great way to also just get connected and sort of find out more recent updates and different ways to take action. There's also, I believe, still an opportunity to submit written comment to the OTC to tell them to stop extending freeways. That's on their sort of confusing website, but I can get the information for that for people if you're interested. And then updates about these campaigns will be on social media as well at sunrisepdx.youthversusodot. Okay, so this is, I think this is the last slide. Okay. Yeah, so I wanted to talk just briefly about the upcoming citywide Portland climate strike. I am the co-lead of Portland Youth Climate Strike in the fall. We had a few thousand students walk out of school and march to City Hall demanding climate justice. And so this spring, we're trying to take it a little bit further and specifically call on adults to strike with young people. Because as Sue mentioned in the beginning, there are a lot of adults who sort of think, oh, like the young people are going to take care of it. But no, we need everybody. And so we're really trying to get more adults to show up, and young people will be striking from school, but we also want anyone who can be there with us to be there. A lot of the logistical details have not been worked out yet, but all of the information is on our Instagram if folks have social media, but if not, you can also text strike WS to this number, and then that will allow you to receive updates about the strike. I'll leave that up for a second. Yeah, oh, the other important thing about the strike that I forgot to mention is that the idea is that it culminates in this sort of Portland Climate Festival after the strike, where lots of organizations will be tabling, and there will be some trainings and just different opportunities to get connected. And the idea is theoretically organizations that are tabling will plan some sort of event or training or action that happens later in the spring or during the summer. And so we're sort of trying to use this climate strike as an opportunity to kick off a summer of climate action, because I think it's easy for the momentum of climate strikes to be lost sort of within one day. It's like you're out there in the streets for a couple hours and you're really excited and it feels like there's so much energy, and then the next day it just sort of like disappears. And so we're trying to find ways to keep the momentum going, because I know especially like for organizers, a lot of us get really burnt out after the one big mobilization, and then that's not really sustainable. So we're trying to break that cycle. Yeah, all right. I will just open it up for questions now.
Wow. Well, I'll just start off by saying thank you very much. I learned a lot, and you can all see why Ada is a leader in our city and doing a remarkable work. Plus going to school. Let me remind you, this is not her full-time job. Her full-time job is being a student, or maybe it's not. I don't know. I see a hand up from Linda. Linda, do you want to start us off with a question?
Sure. Ada, thank you so much. And your suggestions bring lots of things to mind that we can talk about in CFE and see about whether we can participate going forward. But the question I have for right now is, you mentioned that ODOT didn't have to do an EIS on the expansion. And I'm wondering why not. And I'm wondering whether or not you've pursued suing.
Yeah, so there actually have been multiple lawsuits filed against ODOT for not doing the EIS. They did, okay, backing up a little bit, they did an environmental assessment, which is sort of like the shorter, cheaper version of an EIS, and it didn't include studying alternatives to expansion. So there was like no build option studied, which is the main problem with not doing the EIS. And so since then, like other independent studies have found that a lot of the information that they said in the environmental assessment was actually not correct. And so No More Freeways and Neighbors for Clean Air and the Boise Elliott Neighborhood Association have collectively filed a lawsuit against ODOT. And so the federal government recently rescinded their finding of no significant impact on the environmental assessment, which means that as of right now, they have to do another environmental assessment, but we are trying to really push for them to do the EIS instead, because it would include studying alternatives, and that is probably the most realistic route to stopping the expansion.
Thanks for that question, Linda. Yeah. Did you have a follow-up, Linda? I'm sorry. No. Okay, great. Other questions? Well, I've got a few. So, oh, good. Brian, please.
Obviously, that bridge complex needs to be replaced at some point for seismic reasons. And could you just fill us in on the alternatives if we don't go for that kind of mega project that you're opposing? What do you see as the alternative?
Yeah, so the bridge, we definitely agree that the bridge needs to be replaced. It's definitely a hazard if there's an earthquake, which is due. And so essentially what we want is for, basically essentially just that, the bridge to be replaced to make it more earthquake safe, and then building really reliable transit and bike lanes on the bridge. All of those things can be done without making it into this 10 or 12 lane freeway that's going to increase our emissions and increase our dependence on cars.
Thank you.
Keith, I see your hand up, and then Leslie. Keith, you're muted, sir. There we go.
Thank you so much, Ada, for all your activism and setting an example for all of us. And I love what's going on with youth being involved in the system. I wanted to know, I was involved at Tubman when I was working at DEQ, where we set up some sampling at the north end of the school, and we were trying to show how serious the pollution problem was there, and we put out a lot of numbers. And when that project first was proposed, it's been around for a long time, the widening, I was thinking of it as a way to reduce pollution because it's such a bottleneck there, and all the traffic comes to a real slowdown, and I was thinking that was a way to decrease pollution. So I just wondered how you looked at it from an efficiency point of view, that, you know, if they put in bike paths and new neighborhood amenities, some of it could be good, and especially if they could get the traffic just to flow more smoothly and not all come to a stop with all these big trucks belching out the diesel below, you know, and that sort of thing. So how do you address that idea? You must have heard it before.
Yeah, that is definitely one of the frequent points for why it should be expanded is, yeah, essentially the idea that if there's less idling, then there's less pollution. And that was the basis that ODOT was explaining their original claims for the environmental assessment off of. But that assumes that expanding the freeway would reduce traffic, which it wouldn't, which has been shown time and time again because of induced demand. Not a single freeway expansion in North America has ever solved the problem of congestion. And so it could theoretically slightly lessen pollution for a short amount of time after it was expanded, but eventually just the volume of vehicles on the freeway would catch up again. And so it would be then just as much traffic as before and more pollution because there's more lanes and more traffic. And so essentially the idea is that expanding freeways isn't sustainable because it might reduce traffic for a bit, but then, 10 years later, they would just be talking about expanding it again. And then if that just keeps happening and happening, then we just have this entire city essentially that is concrete. And so, the claim about it reducing pollution has been debunked several times now by like various different studies. And so that is a big part of like trying to get the public to understand what's going on, is because ODOT does have a lot of power to push that narrative, which is definitely difficult.
I sure agree with you that there should be no freeway expansion or no new freeways. So thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Yeah, Keith has that inside scoop since he worked in that area. So thanks for that, Keith. Appreciate it. Leslie, let's go to you and then we'll go to Bill.
Yeah, my question tags on to that because even in my neighborhood in Southwest, the big trucks get off of the freeway there and go down Barber. So it doesn't, they'll go on to the side roads if they can't do the freeway. And my question is, wouldn't it be fruitful to spend money also, or spend time and money also on trying to get our railroads back? Because they originally, the trucks really create a lot of congestion. There's a lot of commerce that goes on and it's important. But I think, freeing up the freeways for the other vehicles might be the way. Also, making the trucks electric is also another way. But I think, if we could I just want your opinion on rail traffic.
Yeah, basically just yes. We should be investing in rail, especially because trucks pollute so much. And then people do say, oh, but we can electrify everything. And yes, like we should be electrifying things, but none of the projections show that we could possibly electrify fast enough for it to lower carbon emissions in the way that we need to. And so, investing in things like rail and transit are probably the only way to reduce emissions in the way that we need to.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's the key here, right? Is that speed that, we have these just few years to do this. Yeah, thank you, Ada. Bill?
I think I wanted to suggest to bring up Ada, the idea that you might, as the Sunrise organization, might begin to promote the issue of electrifying school buses. There are sort of 2 points of view. One is the overall diminution of greenhouse gas. And the second is the school buses subject an awful lot of young people to their exhaust. They're riding in it and getting out of it and being around it when it stops. So that it might be that that's an issue that Sunrise may want to make public.
Yeah, for sure. Portland Public Schools recently passed a pretty big climate crisis response policy, which a lot of student advocates have been working on for several years. And part of that, yeah, is electrification of school buses, because PPS owns, I think, one of the largest bus fleets in the region, which is sort of interesting and like not what you would expect. But yeah, they definitely have a role to play.
Did you have a follow-up, Bill? I just want to make sure with your hand up.
Oh, no, nope. I
Okay.
just need to get my hand down.
Oh,
Thank you.
no, it's fine. That's great. And I'll just remind people to mute themselves when they're not speaking. And I think I saw Emily and then Linda and Rick. Emily first.
Thank you, Ada. This is so great. You're just amazing. I'm really interested in your candidate endorsements. I saw that you were endorsing Joanne Hardesty. I'm really curious about, have you interviewed candidates for governor yet? And have you picked one for that position?
We have not yet. I haven't been working super closely with the political team, but I think we've sent out our sort of endorsement questionnaire to a lot of candidates, which sort of covers all the main issues that Sunrise is concerned about. And then, the updates will be about endorsements will be on our social media and website when they're determined, but I'm not super involved in that part of Sunrise.
I'm glad you're not trying to do it all. It doesn't work. You're doing plenty. Thank you.
Yes, I would love to do it, but I just don't have time.
It's great, though. It's great. There's a whole group of you at Sunrise. And so, you're divide and conquer, and it's nice to know where you are with those other groups. So thanks for reporting with that. I'm not sure if Rick had his hand up first or not, but let's go to Rick and then Linda and Sarah.
Thank you, and thank you, Ada, for all the work you're doing in all of these areas. I had a question about the Sunrise PDX activity and the Sunrise movement in general that I noted you're involved with. Two questions, actually. The first one is, are you aware of, I know Sunrise is pretty decentralized, and each group kind of organize themselves, at least that's what I've been led to believe. But has there been a Sunrise movement nationally in the whole area of the youth get out the vote or the youth voter registration area, recognizing that the votes of the youth will be critical about whether or not any environmental legislation is passed in federal legislature?
Yeah, so the Portland Hub doesn't work a whole lot with Sunrise National, but Sunrise National does do a lot of pushes for youth voter registration, a lot of phone banking and canvassing. And the phone banks are great because anyone can join them, and they're virtual, and we just sit and call voters, which I think is a great way for like volunteers to be involved, even if they can't commit a lot of time to organizing. But yeah, I think that is a big part of the work that Sunrise does, is recognizing that mobilizing young people is how we're going to win these changes. And so that is sort of the foundation, to my understanding, that Sunrise is built off of.
Great. Well, I haven't been able to find online links to that, so I'll just keep searching further because I think it's such a critical issue for us. The second question is, you mentioned that electrifying trucks is not going to solve the problems. There's a lot of apparent solutions to the problems that are being put out there, but one of the leading writers on carbon emissions indicates that we really are in a pickle, and what we're really going to have to face is cutting carbon emissions by a society, and that means change in behavior. And I'm wondering if you as young people are the ones that are really going to pay the price of this. So I'm wondering if there has been discussion about that reality and what approaches you all are taking on the carbon emission issue.
Yeah, so definitely changing behavior is important, but I think that in order to do that, we first need to build the systems for people to be able to change their behavior, because it would be great if everyone could choose to bike and walk and take transit everywhere, but we just don't have the infrastructure for that right now. And so a lot of the work that we're doing currently is really about giving people options, because I think a lot of people, if they realize that, oh, I could walk around my neighborhood and it would be a nice walk, or I could bike with my family, or I could take the bus and it would be fast and affordable. I don't think as many people would choose to drive, but the problem is that our society is built for cars. And so it doesn't really give people the autonomy to change their actions. And like, of course, some people can, like if you have the resources to be able to not drive, then that's great. Yeah, but a lot of it really is about building a system that lets people choose.
Wow, that's a profound answer. Thank you so much. Linda, I think you're next. And Linda, you're on mute still.
Wanted to mention that Unitarian Universalist Association has its national meeting, General Assembly, at the end of June at the Convention Center. And I'm mentioning it because it might be an opportunity to have a demonstration that could involve, there will be a couple thousand delegates there. So the convention center is close to where the freeway expansion would be. It's just a thought that maybe it might be something that we could explore if you are interested in having your Sunrise group be part of that. Good visibility, perhaps.
Yeah, and Linda, I wonder if you're thinking that it would also allow other people in other cities around the country to understand what you all are doing here as a model. Is that kind of what you're thinking, Linda, or just as a way to get in the press potentially, or do you have a sense of what that?
Yeah, it always has those couple opportunities if we do some kind of a witness event at General Assembly. One, it calls the local attention to it because it may attract some press that you might not otherwise get. And the second is that it lets people around the country say, hey, that's happening in our city too, and we could work on that. So I think it's definitely got both potentials. I'm not in a position to say, yes, we could definitely do it, but I just wanted to kind of put it out there and see if CFE is interested and see if you are interested in whether it's something we might want to pursue.
Yeah, that definitely sounds interesting. I'm also not in a position to like commit to if that's something you FIODOC can work on, just because we have so many things going on. But yeah, thank you for putting that out there.
And I think you're the contact person, Ada, since you're, yeah. Oh, great. So we already have your contact information. Okay, let's move it. Thank you, Linda. Let's move it to Sarah.
Hi, first a big thank you to Ada and Sue. And I wanted to know, Ada, if a person wanted to financially support youth versus ODOT, is there some place or way that we could help?
Theoretically, yes. I also am not the person who knows the logistics of that. We should probably figure out a better system for it. But that's also something that I can find out. And possibly, like, Sue, would it be possible for you to send like a follow-up email with some of the things that I have said information would get out but don't have on hand right here?
Yeah, I've got a whole list of those things,
Okay.
and we'll definitely send a follow-up, especially for the folks I know that wanted to be here that couldn't, and then for those of us attending. So absolutely. And I'll send that by Ada and get a little bit more detail on some of those topics, especially funding. I'm sure making signs and, getting the press out and all that takes some money. So it would be, I'm sure, helpful. Thank you. And Andrew's got her hand up.
Yeah, I was happy to see this opportunity on the front steps. I don't usually attend your meetings, but I wanted to call the group's attention and Ada's attention to a man named Robert Liberty. Ada, are you familiar with that fellow? He was a member and previous chair of the Columbia Gorge Commission. And I happened to hear him being interviewed by Barbara Bernstein on Locus Focus on COHHO in January. And he is very articulate in his arguments against the expansion, the freeway expansion. And I just commend that interview to all of you. It was January, in my notes it says January 33rd, which can't be right. Probably January 23rd, kboo.fm/locus focus. Anyway, I just wanted to mention Robert Liberty. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. And thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
Brian, I see your hand up.
Am I muted? No, I'm not. First of all, again, Ada, your work is so inspiring, and the sunrise. Sorry, sunrise is such an inspiring movement, and I guess it's global, really, not just national or local. But I also wanted to just raise my hand and endorse what Linda said about the witness at the GA, and I think CFE should pursue that. I'm way over volunteered at the moment, as Linda, but I definitely think it's a good idea. So thanks again.
I'm looking for other hands. Yes, because I have a couple. Oh, yeah, Susan.
Ada, I joined the list of cheers for you and appreciation that you're here, and also to Sue for leading today's meeting. I live in Multnomah County, but not in Portland proper. And so I'm curious about whether there are other schools and people from other schools outside the Portland area involved in your organizations.
Yeah, we have two Youth versus ODOT organizers from Clackamas County in Boring and McMinnville, and then there's also a couple of people who are in Beaverton. So we're trying to, we've been trying to extend it to more like rural organizing, and especially like emphasis on the fact that rural communities often don't have nearly as good access to transit as we do here in Portland. And so,
yes,
yeah, definitely. Like
thanks very much. Appreciate that.
Gosh, these are all great questions. It looks like Emily has found a link for donations. So I hope that's correct, Ada. That is in the chat there. Does that look right?
I think so. It might be connected to like the Sunrise National thing. I've been asked about that in the past, and I'm not quite sure, but I will check.
Okay, so we won't put that in the notes until we
I
get
checked.
that checked in.
For Portland only. It's Portland only.
Oh, good. Okay.
Cool. Okay. Yes, Portland only.
And I know the Sunrise organization that is working on insurance companies that started in Australia has that same name. So there's some confusion there. So you have to be careful. I mean, that's another great organization, and I know those organizers, but unfortunately they have the same name because they started in Australia kind of at the same time as the youth movement. So we do have to be careful with that Sunrise name. Okay, moving over to Bill.
I wanted to ask Ada, at Grant High School, do you actually have a club kind of structure that your group can meet after school while you're already together for the school day? Or is it independent of the schools entirely?
Yeah, we have an environmental justice club at Grant, but Youth versus ODOT and Sunrise aren't associated with Grant because we have folks from lots of different schools. So we meet like through Sunrise and on Zoom just in the evenings.
I see. I see. The Zoom helps out a lot then, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is good, especially because like a lot of people wouldn't be able to make it in person if like they live farther away, and it's easier for people's schedules. There's definitely like pros and cons of Zoom because it is harder to really like connect with people and build community over Zoom, but it does make it a lot more accessible for folks, which is good.
Would you comment about the other high schools from which you have at least some activity, some support?
Yeah, we have some folks at Cleveland and Lincoln, I believe, and then Sunset High School in Beaverton. A lot of the core Youth versus ODOT organizers go to Grant, but in Sunrise PDX as a whole, there are people at lots of different schools. And then I've also been working on building through Portland Youth Climate Strike, a network of like all the environmental justice clubs at various schools across the city to lead strikes. And so there's at least like some people at every school working on various climate work, whether that's with Youth versus ODOT or the climate strike or other independent school projects.
Ah, very good. Thank you.
Linda?
Yeah, it is. So I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the fact that you are endorsing candidates. For purposes of our donations and so on, how are you legally organized? Is there a C3 or a C4 or a PAC or what of the legal organization?
Yeah, Sunrise has C3 and C4 status used for different things.
Great questions. These are such great questions. And there's the Twitter handle for that Emily's doing our background research for us as we go. So thank you, Emily. Linda, do you still have your hand up? I'm sorry, or are you good? Okay. Any other questions? Whether I'm scanning the screen with other hands. I just want to put out that I became familiar with Ada through Divest Oregon. You know, I'm pretty active there. And we set up a fellowship program. And I just want to put that out to any of you that are in other organizations that are looking for including the youth voice. And really, it's not just including the youth voice, it's really being led. We've gotten just the best recommendations and ideas and connections from our youth activists. And so the Divest Oregon has asked 6 youth from around the state to be part of the fellows group at the Divest Oregon campaign. And so I just encourage you, if you're in other groups, you might look into, asking youth to join you through a fellowship type of arrangement. I'd be happy to tell you more about how we did that, but it's been just super helpful. Ada and Ukiah and Cassie, who you already mentioned, and some others have just been super helpful in our campaign in understanding what's important for youth and also giving us great ideas of how to work the structures in Oregon, because they are way ahead of us, light years ahead of us in organizing, as you can see clearly. Ada runs circles around the rest of us, and we're just so happy to have her in our midst. Oh, and Andrea's got that Locust Focus January 3rd, the Columbia Columbia River crossing roars back to life. So I think we're coming toward the end of our time together. Any last questions or comments, Ada or any others here? Linda, are you back on?
Yeah, I would just mention that I think we will definitely put on our Community for Earth agenda for the second Sunday in April, follow up Ada, so that we can talk about how we can participate in May 20 or what we can do to support you. So that's our business meeting, and we will follow up at that point with how more we can be of help. And thanks again so much.
So I'm just going to put May 20th on my calendar. I'm going to be there for the climate strike. I think many of us were involved with the September 2019 climate strike. That's really when I started my climate activism. I'm really new to this as opposed to most of you. And so I'm super psyched for that. And maybe we need to think about tabling there or helping table or whatever else we can do to support there. So I'm pretty jazzed about that. And oh, Leslie's got her hand up.
Yeah, I was wondering where that's going to be. Is that going to be the same area across the bridge and down in Waterfront Park, or different area?
Probably downtown, but we're still working on coordinating with lots of different organizations about what would make the most sense for folks.
Thank you. And this also, I want to say to the rest of the committee, this might be an opportunity to get our banner back up, because I looked yesterday when I was downtown at the church and our banner is not there.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
FYI.
Yeah.
FYI.
Good
Yeah.
to know. I missed that.
Mhm.
Maybe at Patricia Bellamy's, or Bill Harris may have it, know where it is. I think he moved it last.
Wait a minute, which banner are we?
No, I'm talking about the banner on Salmon Street on the building. On the
Big banner on the side of
The
the building.
climate crisis banner.
Yeah.
Oh, I
It's
didn't.
been down for a couple of months.
Anyway.
Okay, well, that's something for the business meeting too. It sounds like, or
Exactly.
before then. Okay. Oh, Ada, thanks for your email, everybody. It's in the chat, and I'll also make sure to send it in the notes. So we can have that for the May 20th climate strike, and then thinking about General Assembly in June. Bill, oh, you got your hand up?
Yes, briefly, I wanted to say in response to Emily, indeed, I do know where the Community for Earth banner is. It's at the closet we use to table. So if anybody needs it, we go to the office, get permission to get in the tabling supply room, and there is the banner.
Perfect. Good to know. Okay, everybody. I'd like to just thank Ada again from all of us. It was super useful, super thoughtful, and we are so appreciative. And we are not going to put it all on you. We're going to be there with you. So thank you so much. Bill, I think you have a closing reading, and then we'll say goodbye. Okay.
Here are some words about Archbishop Tutu. He was Archbishop of the Anglican Church of South Africa before and after the end of apartheid in April of 1994. Regarding living joyously, this is an excerpt from the introduction in the book entitled Impossible Will Take a Little While. Some years ago, Archbishop Tutu spoke seriously in Los Angeles at a benefit for a South African project. Afterwards, a few other people spoke. Then a band from East LA took the stage and launched into an irresistibly rhythmic tune. People started dancing. Suddenly, I noticed Tutu boogieing away in the middle of the crowd. I'd never seen a Nobel Peace Prize winner, still less one with a potentially fatal illness, move with such joy and abandon. Tutu, I realized, knows how to have a good time. Indeed, it dawned on me that his ability to recognize and embrace life's pleasures helps him face its cruelties and disappointments, be they personal or political, to have a good time. Thank you.
It's a great one to end on. Thank you, Bill. And thanks everybody for being here. Thanks again to Ada. Hope you all have a great day. Feel free to stick around and chat a little bit or take off, and maybe I'll see you at church in an hour. All right. Take good care, everybody. Thank you so much, Ada.
Thank you, Ada.
Thank you, Sue, too.
You bet. Isn't she great? Yeah.
And you and Ada met then with that
Through Divest Oregon.
youth fellows group.
Right.
You have
Yeah.
a fellows group that includes some youth. It's not entirely youth.
It's pretty much youth. There's one a little bit older, but the rest are all high school students or just recently graduated. Yeah, it ended up that way. It became more of a youth group,
Oh,
but the
World-
fellows program is, I get that was an idea from Deneen O'Rourke. She's one of the organizers at 350 PDX, and she works a lot with the youth. She helped, develop the 2019 climate strike. It was youth led, but she really, well, she's only 25, so heck, she's a youth too. But she put us in touch with some of these youth organizers, and yeah, they're just, really at 16, I just think what I was doing when I was 16. And she started, like 3 years ago when she was 13. So can you imagine? It's incredible. Yeah. So,
When I was 16, we had the Vietnam War to
yeah.
worry about. I was out on the street, so.
Oh, see, there you go. You were one of those. I was not. I was worried about getting first chair in band. That's what I was worried about.
Probably do you a bit more good in the end.
And I didn't get first chair ever anyway. Linda, what were you going to say?
I'm excited about the May 20 climate strike and the fact that they're planning it citywide. And I have been wanting to get in the street and thinking, why aren't we out there marching? So I'm really glad that this is happening. I'm wondering, Sue, if you know whether 350 PDX is heavily involved again this time around, or
Deneen is, but we just had a general meeting, and they did, and there wasn't that wasn't the whole focus. It should have been the whole focus. So I haven't been as involved with 350 just because I've been so heads down with Divest Oregon. So I don't know why they're not that. They should be all about that right now, and that's what brought me into the movement. So I don't know why they, it should be huge. And I actually made it a note to myself to talk to Deneen about. I know she is involved, as a staff member, but I don't know if the whole organization is getting, activated.
is Jennifer still involved?
She and I are both kind of doing the Divest Oregon thing. So she went and did a presentation, but they wanted us to do a presentation. It should have been about the climate strike, really. Yeah, I know. It's a little disappointing.
Emily, you've got a good network. Are you seeing beginnings of activation for this?
I haven't heard a word. This is the first I heard about it.
Oh man. Oh, that's
yeah. But we can, if the youth are on it, I trust that it's going to happen.
Well, but I'd like it not to happen with just the youth. I'd like it to happen.
Well, right. All we have to do is put the word out, especially if other people are moving on it. So I don't think it'll be a problem. We've got some time now. It's not the 1st of April.
Yeah, they've still got a couple months, so it's just. But I think you're right, Linda.
Just barely enough time.
Yeah.
Linda, I wanted to mention to you. I know Robert Liberty, such that I'd be delighted to talk with him about being part of a rally at the General Assembly.
Sure. Well, Robert's a really good friend of mine.
Okay.
So when Andrea was mentioning that, I was thinking, okay, well, if we need to reach out to Robert, that's really easy for me.
Well, Robert just has a lot of friends.
Yeah.
Is Robert Unitarian?
No.
Well, he is in so many ways.
Oh, yeah.
Except for going to church. No.
Except for giving a donation and going to church. Okay.
Except for attendance and money.
But his background, in addition to being an elected official and so on, has been studying urban planning for years. And
why isn't he working with Youth versus ODOT? Honestly, that seems like a good. That's a big miss. It seems to me then.
Well, probably because, like Ada, he's got 87,000.
Well, right, but I think making that connection would be really.
Well, I can send him an email and ask him and mention that his name came up and ask him if he's interested in getting in touch with her.
Yeah, I think that'd be awesome. If you're a friend, that would be awesome. Okay, well, she's amazing, and I'll put together a little follow-up. And what else?
I was just curious if any of you know that with Bill McKibben's putting a lot of his efforts in the second act, if that's kind of diminished the 350.org activity, or are people still connected with 350.org? What's going on there?
Yeah, I am very connected, but that's a long story, I think, honestly.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think they're trying to do a lot, which is great, right? But I think, they're just trying to do a lot.
Are you talking second act or 350?
Third act.
350.
Third act, sorry, right.
Yeah, third act. I don't know that a lot of people have been siphoned off to third act. The people that are involved at 350 are involved. And really what I see is that there's a lot of teams like the forestry team is like, they're on fire, and the city county watchdog folks, I think, are, doing their thing. So I think it's really turned into a lot of team stuff, and the whole group, like the creative arts team, they're doing a lot of cool stuff. So the different groups are doing things, but I'm not sure the general meetings and so forth are where they need to be.
And you're talking about 350.org now.
Yeah.
Okay,
Which is very different than third act.
It is.
Right.
Very different.
Yeah.
But the May 20 climate strike could be action for third act. I mean, we could maybe use that as a way to
Totally.
coalesce our third act group here in Portland area.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Does anybody have a connection to third act?
Sure.
Yeah, I do. Yes. They're still getting everything. They're still getting all the pieces buttoned up and the walls painted. I mean, there's, it's early days, but yes, they're very active. They're still primary focus is banks, voting, and I think it'll quickly move to electrification. Supporting electrification of everything. But yes, they're very active. And yeah, voting and is really one of their focuses for the next month or two as the primaries move forward. So there is a lot going on. I'm happy to do a report, but I'm not ready right now.
We can explore that again, I think, on the second Sunday next month, and include third act with thinking about what we can do on May 20 and
yeah,
so on, if that sounds right. And I will send an email off to Dana about the potential for a public witness event at GA related to this freeway expansion. Dana has been working with Environmental Displaced Persons Association to potentially be the public witness event. But so far it hasn't come together completely, I think. So I don't know, it's not known for sure that that's going to happen. And even if it did, it might not mean that we couldn't do both. But if that didn't happen, then this public witness event is wide open and could definitely be the freeway expansion. I don't know, we'd have to think about, we don't want to take that away from Sunrise and Ada and her group. So they'd need to lead on it in some fashion, and they may not be interested.
Right. I don't know. Like she said, they've got a lot going on. The thing to think about is that there's an intersection between those, right? Between the expansion and what happened up, with DAPL. So it's DAPL, right? Is that the right words? No. The
Emmanuel
displaced.
Association.
Yeah. Thank you. Whatever. Because I mean, it was all part of that I-5. That was part of it, and then the Emmanuel and the whole thing. So I mean, there's an intersection there of displacing people when you expand freeways, displacing people when you just want their land, basically. So yeah, Rick.
I was just thinking about, someone was mentioning how we might be able to get some media coverage for some of these events. And for a public demonstration type event, if there's more than one organization represented that's kind of under an umbrella like the climate crisis, the more you have, the more likely you'd have the opportunity to get media. So the idea of collaborating, which a lot of people are thinking is, we have to start collaborating with groups if we're going to make a difference. So that's another thought about a public event.
Mm-hmm.
Support one another at the same time, but also get the media coverage.
Totally. Yeah. Good. Well, I love the collaborations, and I love, how the work I'm doing is, combining with this and combining with all of it. That's where we need to be. So anybody going to church or just me? I gotta say, last week it was so much like a really small summer service that I was like, I'm gonna really try to start going, because it just, what's left? It felt kind of like a bomb had hit the church. Honestly, that's how it felt to me. So,
well, I'm so sorry it felt that way. It seems to me that we still have, well, I mean, I'm projecting myself. I'm going to continue to avoid crowds for some time more, and I'm really grateful for the virtual experience that actually began a few years ago. As I understand it, now that the equipment is probably polished up and ready to go for another 5 years.
Yeah.
So we can have a live church and we can have a virtual one.
No, and it's good to have both. It's great to have both. And I understand why people aren't there, but it's almost like 350, really. It makes me think about that, because I think groups like CFE and some of the other social justice groups and Alliance are really strong still. But then it's when you bring the whole group together, it just doesn't feel like that it's there is there or something. I don't know. I wonder if maybe these Zoom things has strengthened the smaller groups, but the larger groups don't feel as cohesive somehow. I don't know. I maybe we're just figuring this all out, but yeah.
I think yours is a very good idea to recognize that this is an immense stress on the church to have been shut down physically for so long.
Yeah, and I just know that this is Bill's last few months, and I'm going to miss him terribly. So I also just don't want to miss one more moment with being in person with him. So that's where I come from. But I do understand not wanting to be with the group.
Well, you represent
the thing is, just so you know, you won't be elbow to elbow with people, because there was a lot of space in there. Yeah.
Are they going to have coffee down in Fuller today?
They didn't last week. Yeah, Dave Delk, of course, was there with his, the 2 petition signature things. So he was just at the end of the lobby area getting signatures. So that was the only table, and they just brought the tables up.
Daveling has moved upstairs then, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, just the one table. He and I'm just blanking on her name from Peace Action. Help me out. Oh, the Peace Action. Yeah. Yeah, Tess and he were there. Thank you. And I was like, oh, God bless them. They're not gonna, not table if they can get some signatures. So it was awesome. But okay.
Sue, you did a great job today. It was really smooth and beautiful, and thank you so very much for.
Oh, of course, happy to do it, and I'm just thrilled, and it's so nice that that Dana has the honorarium for her. So I'm going to be happy to send her a thank you note with the honorarium, or they'll send one, or however that'll work. And
I didn't know about that. That's good.
Yeah. So that happened when we had Jay from NAACP. We sent an honorarium that she put into the scholarship fund that she has at University of Portland, and I don't know what Ada will do with it, but if she just ends up getting to do whatever, as a high school student, I'm thrilled for her, and really glad that and she didn't know about the money until way after. So when I asked her, I clearly didn't even think about that. So. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to get ready for church, but great to see you all.
Thank you, Sue.
You can stay on if you want, but I'm going to go on. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Bye.